If you don't know anything about the Society of Environmental Journalists, we are North America's oldest and largest organization dedicated to improving the quality and accuracy and visibility of environmental reporting. We're 1,300 strong, working journalists in all media, print, broadcast, online, academics, teachers of journalism, particularly those with a focus on environmental issues, and students. So there's plenty of room under that big tent for folks from the university community to consider joining us, and I hope you will. The environment is, we like to say, is the story of the century, and you certainly recognize that here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following remarks have been reviewed by the City of Missoula's Human Resources Department and the City Attorney's Office. Some of the content has been changed to better reflect regulatory and legal constraints. Good evening, gender-neutral gathering of journalism professionals. Please note that the term good and good evening is not intended to imply that evening is necessarily better than any other part of the day. It is my pleasure, in a completely non-sexual sense of the word, to welcome you, as I would any visitors to our city without regard to race, gender, religious preference, or national origin, to Missoula. I'm proud to serve as mayor, an elected official with executive and fiduciary responsibilities to the citizenry of my hometown, which in no way makes me superior, nor does it qualify me for special rights or privileges. And I'd like to thank you for selecting, through a lengthy, documented, and fair process, our city for your gathering. I'd like to draw your attention in an open, collaborative, and non-demanding way to some of Missoula's attraction. Please note that there are many fine attractions in the city. These are only a few and only representative of one opinion, and are in no way intended to suggest that alternative attractions are without merit. As you may have noticed, I have a slight weight problem. This revelation is voluntary and in no way violates personal privacy regulations.
As Rita says, we've been working here for a long time at the University of Montana using honeybees in some rather novel ways. We really do have a long history of environmental science with bees because we pioneered the use of honeybees for mapping pollution across large areas. We've done landscape work in places like Seattle and around Commencement Bay. We've been at Superfund sites throughout the United States and in some parts of the other parts of the world. We eventually had some people come to us and say, if you can use honeybees to map where chemical contaminants are and have been, or to detect releases, could you use them to show us where these things come from? More importantly, could you use them to find things like landmines? Roughly 20,000 people were maimed or killed each year from landmines, and 1/2 of them are children. And it would be really revolutionary and something we would really love to do if we could have a viable way of speeding up the process of finding these things. Currently, the gold standard are dogs. Dogs move across minefields at a fairly slow pace because you have to run them on a leash. These dogs are trained to sit when they smell the odors leaking from the explosives, emitting from the explosives leaking from the mines. If you're on the other end of the leash, you really hope that dog is sitting down on someplace other than where there's yet another mine.
I'm sure a lot of you have been following at least some of the events that have been occurring in the New Orleans metropolitan area over the last 2 years. And I'd say that we as a city might be in a little better shape, at least, if we had a journalism graduate as our mayor as well. So I'll start with that little editorial comment. In all, the flooding in the New Orleans metropolitan area basically flooded about 80% of the city of New Orleans and a significant chunk of other parts of the metro area. As you can see, it's pretty pretty intense.
What we now have is the technological challenge of what to do. This is actually a really cool thing. I have to read the text to you because you can't hear it back. Scientists from the RAND Corporation have created this model to illustrate how a home computer could look like in the year 2004. However, the needed technology will not be economically feasible for the average home. The scientists readily admit that the computer will require not yet invented technology to actually work. But 50 years from now, scientific progress is expected to solve these problems with, I love this part, with teletype interface and Fortran. With Fortran here. The computer will be easy to use. Can you imagine this in your house? And yet, in 1954, this is what they imagined, they hoped we could get to in computer technology. Well, where have we actually ended up? Yes. When you look backwards, this little gizmo, which of course none of us have yet because they don't sell them in Montana. They're all in LA and New York. But when you think about what that will do compared to what 50 years ago we imagined was possible, that exact kind of technology revolution is what we now have to do for energy in the next 50 years. We just have to. We cannot continue the energy system we have. And so I like to look at the computer revolution, and it gives me some hope to look at that old 1954 thing. It's such a joke, and yet this is what they imagined. And here's what reality became. So what we got to do is now transform the energy sector the way we've watched the computer sector change over these 50 years.